Only after getting both testicles removed at the hospital did the man learn it was a misdiagnosis. The cancer had already metastasized through his entire body. Yet learning this didn't make him angry at all. Instead, clutching the lucky charm his late wife left him, he burst into loud laughter. Because he felt that only dying alone without any heirs could offer some solace to his wife's departed soul. But opening your eyes once more, all you see is the dust-caked wedding decal stuck to the window of your old house. You immediately rush around searching the house inside and out, only to find Zoey huddled completely naked on the bed, her big eyes utterly devoid of life. Her once flawless, fair skin is now covered in crisscrossing bruises, and seeing again the woman who had haunted your dreams for half a lifetime, you get instantly overwhelmed with emotion and step forward to pull her into your arms. Countless words of guilt and longing well up, but they all get stuck in your throat, and you break down into bitter sobs. In your past life, you plotted to make Zoey fall into the reservoir, exposing her disheveled state to the whole village when you rescued her. To save her reputation, she was forced to marry you, yet ever since Zoey stepped through your door, she never saw a single good day. Amid your relentless domestic abuse, she took the baby and drowned herself in the reservoir. It wasn't until your brother-in-law pulled their lifeless bodies from the water that you finally came to your senses. Afterward, riding the economic boom, you amassed enough wealth to last 10 lifetimes, but the woman who taught you how to grow up with her life was already gone. Just as you are lost in the joy of being reborn, a piercing scream suddenly rings out. "Ah, get off me, don't touch me." Seeing Zoey trembling from head to toe, it hits you. This time, Zoey had borrowed money from her parents to buy baby cereal, but you snatched it away to buy booze, coming home dead drunk only to brutally abuse her in bed. Thinking of this, you raise your hand and slap yourself across the face over a dozen times, blood soon trickling from the corner of your mouth. Zoey watches your actions quietly and lets out a scoff of bitter mockery. She's lost count of how many times this has happened. After all, every time you sobered up, you'd get on your knees begging for forgiveness, yet within a couple of days, your fists would rain down on her all over again. She could endure your humiliating abuse, but she couldn't bear seeing her baby starve. The infant's faint, weak whimpering brings a flicker of life back to Zoey's pretty eyes. Panicked, she throws on some clothes and scoops up her daughter, but because of severe malnutrition, she has no breast milk to give, making the little one wail even louder, and the baby's cries jolt you awake. You jump out of bed, snatch up your clothes from the floor, and blurt out, "Hang tight, honey, I'll go get some food for our girl right now." With that, you sprint out the door toward the corner store at the edge of the village. Spotting you, old Mr. Miller flashes his yellow teeth and asks, "What booze you want this time?" "Uncle Miller, can I get a bag of baby cereal on credit? I'll pay you back tomorrow." Hearing you ask for credit again, old Mr. Miller eyes the swollen, red handprints on your face, says nothing, and takes a bag of baby cereal off the shelf for you. You thank him profusely and rush back home. Stepping inside to see your wife looking just as guarded as when you left, a sharp pang of heartache strikes you again. "Honey, I got the baby cereal. I'm warning you, don't you dare sell my daughter, or I swear to God your family line ends right here." Seeing this, you freeze dead in your tracks. Faint memories come rushing back. Yes, originally you had planned to sell your daughter to a couple in town, just to trade for booze money. What kind of bastard was I? No wonder I died of testicular cancer in my past life. I totally had it coming, so you set the baby cereal down on the rickety little bed. "I swear I'll never sell our baby girl. First thing tomorrow, I'm heading to town to find work." With that, you turned around and walked out. Stepping outside, you slapped yourself hard across the face a few more times. If memory served, Zoey took the baby and jumped into the reservoir right around this time. Just the thought of it sent shivers down your entire body. Seeing nightfall approaching and knowing there was no food left at home, 20 minutes later, you arrived at the foot of the back hills, pulled the elastic band right out of your waistband and whipped up a slingshot. Snap, you loosed a pebble, sending a turtle dove flapping into the air. In your previous life, after making it big, you fell in love with target shooting and messed around with slingshots for quite a while. After crouching in the brush for a good while, you finally managed to trap a pheasant under a basket and took down several turtle doves with the slingshot. The turtle doves were small, barely a pound or two all four combined, but that pheasant was a hefty 5-pounder. You lashed them together with wild vines, hung them on a branch, and was about to carry them home on your shoulders when you suddenly noticed the fresh game behind you had vanished. A cold sweat instantly broke out all over you. Did you just see a ghost? Suddenly, you caught a glimmer of light flashing from the amulet hanging on your chest. It was the charm your wife had worn close in your past life, neither jade nor plastic. Only when she took her own life at the reservoir did she take it off and leave it on the bank. As you looked closer, the glow faded away and you couldn't help reaching out to touch it. The next second, you were pulled into another dimension. In terms of size, it wasn't even as big as your old hospital room. After testing it a few times, you realized holding the amulet lets you enter, and just thinking about leaving pops you right back out. With this cheat code in hand, you could definitely make a massive comeback in this lifetime. On the way home, you noticed many houses already had electricity, while your place still burned kerosene lamps. The worst years of famine had long passed, yet you guys were still living hand-to-mouth. You carried the game straight into the kitchen, and once darkness had completely fallen, you carried a huge bowl of turtle dove soup into the main room. Zoey, dinner's ready. I made some turtle dove soup to help with your milk supply. Calling out 3 times in a row, Zoey finally walked slowly out of the inner room. Spotting the giant bowl of turtle dove soup on the table, she didn't rush over. She just stood frozen where she was, her eyes brimming with pure resentment. Right now, looking at your wife wearing clothes covered in patches, a wave of heartache washed over you again. In an era starved of material comforts, Zoey's beauty stood out strikingly, yet you had been such a scumbag, winning her over only to treat her like trash. Seeing her guard completely up, as much as you yearned to sit down and share a meal with her, you knew that with you around, she wouldn't even touch a single bite. I'll go eat in the kitchen. With that, you turned and walked out. Zoey froze in place, staring at the huge bowl overflowing with rich turtle dove soup, a surreal feeling welling up inside her. Is this a dream, or is this a final meal before execution? In the past, whenever there was a bite of food at home, you always stuffed your own face first while she had to settle for dishwater rinsings. So even though she was starving right now, Zoey didn't dare touch it. Only when she walked out the door and saw you crouching under the window slurping soup, with a fat wild pheasant hanging by the kitchen door, guessing you must have gone hunting in the hills, did Zoey turn back into the main room, pick up the bowl, and start eating. After finishing dinner, under your wife's watchful, guarded gaze, you took over all the dishwashing duties. You had always been a deadbeat, so this was probably the first time in this house you'd ever done actual, honest-to-goodness chores. Once done thinking about the rotten things you'd done earlier, you boiled another pot of hot water and carried it inside. Zoey, use this warm water to clean up. Putting down the basin, you turned and hurried out, sitting by the front door. After a long while, faint sounds of splashing water finally drifted from inside. Looking up at the starry sky, you started calculating how to make money tomorrow to turn things around for the family as soon as possible. Autumn had arrived, and winter temperatures would plunge to -20, freezing water instantly. Both your wife and the baby needed warm winter coats, or they'd never survive the season. Once the splashing stopped, you got up and walked back inside. Startled by your sudden entrance, Zoey flinched and shrank back repeatedly. Don't come any closer. Seeing this, you cursed yourself internally for having been such an animal, knowing well that her trauma wouldn't heal overnight. So you gently reassured her, honey, I'm just here to take the dirty water out. With that, you picked up the basin from the floor and headed out. Ignoring you, Zoey threw her clothes on the second you walked out the door. In the yard, you quickly rinsed off with the leftover warm water. After all, while hunting those turtle doves, you'd been lying in the bushes for ages. Once cleaned up, you sat down on the doorstep, reflecting on your past life. There was a time when some out-of-towners kept wanting to forage in the mountains, but terrified of getting lost, they hired you to guide them since you had nothing better to do. Back then, you just thought these city folks had too much time and money on their hands, but after watching them so much, you learned how to harvest wild medicinal orchids. Now you could easily dig them up and sell them. The thought instantly energized you. You tied together a makeshift torch, gathered some crude tools, and called out toward the room, Zoey, lock the door, I'm heading out for a bit. You were gone the whole night, not returning until 4:00 a.m. Talk about pure luck. On your way down the mountain, you stumbled upon a civet nest and scooped up a few blind baby civets. Back home, you prepped everything swiftly, left one in the kitchen, and carried the 2 loaded baskets straight to town. It was market day on the odd dates in town. You found a bustling spot, unpacked the civet meat and pelts from the baskets, and set them out. Nice wild game there, young man. You'd originally figured if you couldn't sell them, you'd just stew the whole batch and share some with your older brothers and sister, but right after setting up, someone came over asking for the price of the meat. $39. Seeing a strapping young fellow like you, sunburnt dark and clearly from the mountain country, the old couple took a good look at you. Plus, at such a steal, $39, they snapped up 2 in one go. Meat still needed ration coupons back then, so wild game like this was the only way to treat their little grandson to a feast. Before leaving, the old lady tugged at her husband's sleeve, buying up all the civet pelts as well, saying she'd make mittens for their grandson. Just like that, in under 2 hours, all the civets were sold out. Then, carrying yesterday's prized harvest, you headed to the town's oldest apothecary. The moment you brought it out, the old clerk behind thick spectacles froze in awe. Carefully taking the prized item, he inspected it thoroughly, then held up his hand to signal an offer. How's this, young man? Seeing the lowball offer, your brow furrowed slightly. Thinking he took you for an easy country bumpkin to rip off, you reached out to snatch your goods back, but the old man pressed his hand down to stop you. Stroking his goatee, he soothed, Hey, young man, if you're not happy with the price, we can talk. $60, not a penny more. Even though you had accidentally snapped part of this prime herb, it was still worth far more than that, but desperate times called for cash with your wife and kids starving at home. After a second of thought, you took the deal, then went off to buy meat and flour. It took hitting 2 state-run co-ops just to track down some rare baby formula. Before heading back, you remembered the patched-up rags your wife wore yesterday, so you stepped into the town's only small stay-toned department store. On the way home, you took a detour to visit a hunter in his 70s, trading a whole pile of food just to get your hands on his prized shotgun. In these times of ration coupons, hunting your own game was the only real way to eat meat freely. As you neared home, you noticed Zoey working the fields with the baby on her back, while your older brother Jack marched over in a blind rage. Where the hell have you been, leaving your wife to toil in the fields alone? Looking at your brother, your nose stung with guilt. I went to town for some work, picked up some meat and flour while I was at it. Bring your wife and the kids over for dinner tonight. Hearing that, your brother shot you a skeptical glare, looking you up and down, eyeing the mud splatters on your pants and the overloaded baskets. Your sister-in-law just steamed a fresh batch of cornbread at noon. Have your wife take a few home later. We'll pass on dinner. Just treat her right from now on. You didn't say another word, simply nodded and hauled everything back home. To win your wife's heart, you had to start with her stomach, so you got busy in the kitchen. Right around dusk, Zoey came home clutching a few pieces of cornbread. The second she stepped into the yard, she caught the savory aroma of meat drifting from the kitchen. Hurrying to the doorway, she saw you bustling around the rustic stove. Working all day, Zoey was utterly starving. After setting the cornbread aside, she walked into the bedroom, laying the sleeping baby down in the crib. But the moment she turned around, she spotted a can of formula sitting on the table. Blood, how could you be such a scumbag? Her sudden accusation jolted your memory, reminding you that the scoundrel you used to be had indeed pulled a knife on your mother-in-law for cash, so you blurted out in denial, I didn't, I earned all this money today. As you spoke, you quickly reached into your pants. Seeing this, Zoey got even angrier, lunging forward and slapping you across the face once more. What kind of time do you think it is to be thinking about that? Taking 2 slaps back-to-back left you caught between tears and laughter. Seeing that Zoey wasn't about to back down, you hurriedly pulled 5 $10 bills out of your pants. Honey, this is what I earned today, take it. Staring at the wad of cash shoved into her hands, Zoey felt the room violently spin around her. Seeing your wife about to collapse, you reached out to catch her, only to have your hand viciously smacked away. She couldn't believe for a second that a deadbeat like you could bring home that much cash in a single day. What kind of shady, crooked business had he gotten into? What on earth were they going to do? Life was just impossible like this. Seeing that Zoey didn't buy a single word, you almost dropped to your knees right then and there. Last night I went up the mountain and foraged wild dendrobium orchids and stumbled across a civet nest. I traded all of it for $60, spent 10 on food supplies, and this is what's left. At the mention of the rare wild orchids, a flicker of awareness returned to Zoey's eyes. Up north it's ginseng, down south it's rare orchids. That stuff had crazy medicinal value and fetched a pretty penny, but they only grew deep in the wilderness and were nearly impossible to track down, let alone in the dead of night. But thinking about it, when she woke up this morning, there really were bloodstains by the water well, and a pot of civet meat was simmering on the stove. Could she actually have misjudged him? How would a guy like him even recognize wild medicinal orchids? Under Zoey's sharp gaze, you raised your right hand to swear an oath. I swear to God I didn't do anything shady, or may I die without an heir. Seeing your wife's breathing steady a bit and the venom fade from her eyes, you let out a silent sigh of relief. Zoey, hurry and stash the money somewhere safe. I'm gonna take some meat over to Jack's place so they can get a fresh bite too. While stashing the cash in your pocket dimension was safer, handing it over to your wife meant handing over the reins of the household. You picked up a plate of stir-fried civet meat along with a pot of simmered fish and tofu soup, set them on the dining table, then filled a heaping bowl of meat in the kitchen and headed to Jack's. On the way, you paid off the baby cereal tab and your old booze debts to old Mr. Miller, while Zoey, clutching the thick bills, hurried back into the bedroom. In the 2+ years since marrying you, you had only ever extorted every penny out of her. This was the first time you'd ever handed over money willingly. She split the cash into 5 stashes, hiding each one in a different spot. Once finished, hearing steady footsteps approaching from outside, she walked out of the room. Staring at the steaming dishes on the table, she felt completely dazed for a second, then quickly peeked into the kitchen. The flour bin was more than half full, the oil jar was topped off, and hanging from the rafters was a thick 15-pound slab of pork belly. Has he really turned a new leaf? Zoey wasn't sure. After all, a leopard never changes its spots. Seeing Zoey sit down, you placed a drumstick in her bowl. I'm heading up the mountain first thing tomorrow. Before winter hits, I need to scavenge every spot for wild orchids. It's the fastest way to make quick cash. Once the country opens up the markets, we'll take that capital to invest in other things. Hearing this, Zoey froze for a second, then simply nodded without uttering a single word. Even if he struck dumb luck last night finding that rare orchid, how could anyone be that lucky every time? Zoey wanted to warn you to just find an honest job if you truly wanted to earn money. Even a few cents a day was better than nothing at all. But knowing your fiery temper, as long as you weren't out gambling and drinking, she decided to just let you be. Holding her chopsticks, she tried to put the drumstick back, but seeing this, you quickly used the baby as an excuse to stop her. Honey, you're way too skinny. Eat more or you won't have milk for the baby. Formula's great, but nothing beats breast milk, not to mention how pricey and rare it is. Have some of this fish and tofu soup, it boosts milk supply. This remark earned you a sharp glare from Zoey, her knuckles turning white around her chopsticks, yet she didn't refuse the food. You've been busting your tail day and night, totally exhausted, but the family's survival was finally secured. After scarfing down your food, you said bluntly, "Honey, I'm hitting the sack." With that, you walked into the bedroom and fell dead asleep the second your head hit the pillow. When Zoey finished the dishes and returned to the room, seeing your discarded clothes on the floor, she knitted her brows, then picked them up to wash them under the moonlight. Utterly drained, she dragged herself back to the bedroom and accidentally kicked a basket on the floor. Picking it up, Zoey was stunned to find a brand new women's outfit and 3 sets of baby clothes. She stared at you in deep slumber for a long time thinking, I really can't figure this man out. You slept like a rock, completely out cold even when your baby girl woke up crying twice during the night. Not until dawn did you groggily open your eyes. Rolling over, you saw Zoey curled up with her back turned to you. Wearing only a ragged little camisole, the sight of her made your mouth water. After all, after Zoey passed away in your previous life, you never touched another woman, so you reached out and pulled her into your arms.